Alrighty guys, I am Blunty and welcome to part 3 of the component choices for Project Devil's Crevice. After the complicated and difficult process of selecting the combination of CPU and motherboard, choosing the RAM was, well, it was much easier. I went with the Kingston HyperX Savage, which is a very 90s sounding name, especially with that big inexplicably capitalized X as part of, not after mind you, as part of the word HyperX, but I rose by any other name, etc, etc. Now, some people will tell you, RAM is RAM, you should just buy whatever is the cheapest of the type you need. And as I mentioned in another video recently to do with leading up to this gaming PC build, no, RAM really is not RAM. Ask anyone who's ever had to diagnose a system with intermittent and unpredictable crashing issues that are impossible to reliably replicate deliberately with any tool, and I speak from bitter experience. Unreliable RAM can cause just a nightmare nest of issues that I never ever want to deal with ever again. So, go for a known brand. Go for a type you can find multiple first-hand, people have actually used it, recommendations, not just what they've read in forums, people have used it. You'd be amazed how many people recommend stuff they've read about and never actually used themselves. It's infuriating, especially when it comes to PC parts, but that's a separate rant altogether. In any case, spend more money if it means no compromising on reputable brands with good support and service and warranty. Now, I had initially selected the g.skill RAM, or g.skill I suppose it's generally pronounced, specifically the Ripjaws. It was very well priced, everywhere I looked found people recommending it as basically bulletproof in every build they've ever used it in, and hey, bonus, it even came with a cool red finned heat spreader that would match pretty closely the heatsinks on the MSI motherboard I'd chosen. The only reason I didn't wind up getting the Ripjaws is that I'm building a compact micro ATX system, and I ran into a few reports of people using this RAM in compact motherboards where the taller heat spreader was potentially interfering with or full out preventing proper mounting of various CPU coolers. Okay then, not the Ripjaws, no big issue. G.skill have other memory with basically identical specs and price, but with more compact heat spreaders on board, so my next best choice was the Aries. However, the Aries come in a slightly orange colour, or at least every picture I looked at seemed to make it look slightly orange, which would probably clash quite poorly with the motherboard I'd chosen. Which in and of itself was not a deal killer, but my case is windowed, so I would prefer a better colour match if I could find one. Enter the Kingston HyperX Savage. Specs and price parity with a low profile heatsink in red. Now, I had originally avoided even looking at the HyperX thanks to their parent company, Kingston's SD cards having prematurely failed on me twice now in my cameras, but the HyperX memory does come almost as highly and as frequently recommended as the G.skill, and RAM and SD cards are very different beasts anyway, and Kingston is the parent company and G.skill are kind of their own little umbrella thing, so I'll take the small twinge of risk I personally feel when going for a company I've chosen to steer clear of, at least for my SD memory card needs. SanDisk, by the way, on SD cards, SanDisk. I always use SanDisk SD cards in my cameras. I have done for many years now, and I've never ever hit a failure. Buy a local, buy from a reputable official dealer, and make sure you're not straddled with a dodgy clone masquerading under a SanDisk sticker. Do not buy your SD cards from eBay. That's a really good way to get ripped off with clone crap. The extra it'll cost you to buy locally in a physical store from a proper dealer is so worth it for peace of mind. Trust me, please take my advice on that. That sidetrack aside, while we're on the subject of SanDisk, boom! Seamless segue, how do you like me now? The storage devices come into play here. The plan is to get a SanDisk SSD. Why SanDisk? Well, because as I just mentioned, they've earned my loyalty and trust and respect with years of utterly flawless performance from the SD cards I use from them. And because SanDisk's SSDs come with similar reputations for reliability, it's an easy choice for me to make. But I haven't purchased it yet, as my budget for parts hasn't stretched far enough in this first order for even the extra $70 a stock standard 128GB SanDisk drive would have cost me. Yes, money is that tight right now. I'm eating a lot of rice and potatoes this month. So, to get me off the ground and get the system up and running, I'm using two 2.5-inch mechanical hard drives I already have. The first is a 750GB 7200 RPM WD Scorpio Black, which was pulled from my now deceased gaming laptop. I believe the hard drive is fine, but I did buy a cheap Seagate 5200 RPM 500GB momentous drive while I was troubleshooting the laptop to see if it could be revived, as I thought the drive may be at fault at first. But seeing as installing the new drive changed nothing about the issues I was having, I expect the WD Scorpio is in fact still absolutely fine. Either way, worst case scenario, the Scorpio is indeed trashed. I used the slower 500GB Seagate to get the system up and running and prepped, and then just clone the installs across to this Samsung SSD when I get it. I also have a review sample of an SSD brand I'm not familiar with, an EAGET, E-A-G-E-T, I'm not even sure how to pronounce that, EAGET. It's a 120GB SSD, and it's coming in from one of those Shenzhen-based Chinese gadget website thingies. So, if that thing's even halfway decent, I'll use the Samsung as my primary system drive, and the EAGET as fast drive space for game and app installs that would notably benefit from an SSD install beyond mere load times. But best case scenario, 2 mechanical hard drives, one 5200 RPM and one 7200 RPM with a total capacity between them of 1.25 terabytes, plus 2 zippy SSD drives with 248 gigabytes between them. Perhaps even more if I wind up swinging for one of the larger capacity and even faster higher end SanDisk drives. And that combination of those 4 drives will be more than sufficient for my needs for a long time coming. But that's it for part 3. Next up, the final pieces of the puzzle for the basic level of this build. The selection of power supply and of course, the case to put it all in. Thanks for watching. I am Blunty and I will catch you in the next part. Hopefully, unless it's really bored you for some reason, please come back. I miss you already.